wrong direction, and I was like, tell me I have commit this morning. Like, it's Thursday, right? That's what day it is. That's what I prepared for.
So for Tuesday, you all need to finish Rowlandson. So to the end of her narrative. We're also going to read a short piece by Mather. Starts at the bottom of 322, and then you just read it to the end on 327. So I think it should be clear where you start and stop. Next Thursday, a week from today, we're going to do excerpts from Franklin and Crevecoeur. We'll talk more about where to start and stop on that on Tuesday. Questions, other housekeeping business we need to take care of before we get started.
Never mind, your office hours are posted on your syllabus, right?
Yes.
Are we
And also on my door.
Cool.
Are we supposed to have already got an email for your online like Facebook class thing?
No.
Okay.
Here's the situation with my Facebook. I did not have an account, a Facebook account.
Mhm.
So
Well,
I
what's
had
your,
to set one up.
What's your Facebook name?
A.L. Schmidt.
All one word? Or
No, A.L. The live video, there apparently when you set up a Facebook account, there is a waiting period
this is
before you have that function to live record.
That's so weird.
It's to prevent people apparently from committing crimes, and
I don't really know how that would deter any crime.
well, because you have to wait.
Is your Facebook on
The
like a
criminals
private?
most likely already have a Facebook account, is what I'm, you know what
But
I
they
mean?
create a fake one so they don't
Okay,
get caught,
okay.
right?
Alright.
And so that's why I've just been recording on YouTube, because my Facebook's jacked. As soon, like I set up the account days before classes started. So I don't know what the waiting period is. The IT guys don't even know how long the waiting period is. As soon as I get that function, I will start using it. But in the meantime, I'm just making do with YouTube.
That's fine.
So you did not miss an email.
Okay, good. Because like I know in Professor Babcock's class, I didn't get an email for his, and he sent out one. So
Yeah.
I was just
yeah.
making sure.
No, that's good to double check. What else? Other
That
housekeeping.
Facebook's funny. Keep
Huh?
up with it. He posts a bunch of funny stuff on his Facebook.
I don't think I actually have him on Facebook.
No other housekeeping?
Oh, how's your day going?
So far it's felt a little chaotic, but you know, we're here. We're all here. So
Agreed.
it's good. It's good. JJ, do you have any housekeeping business? Okay. So, some follow-ups from the RRs on Tuesday. Abigail, you commented about, or you asked, was Bradstreet idealizing the relationship with her husband? Probably, yes. Let me remind you all that her husband was away a lot. And the secret to a good marriage is when you're really getting on each other's nerves, one of you needs to leave for the weekend with your friends. And when you come back, everyone's happy to see each other, and all is forgotten and forgiven, right? Absence really does make the heart grow fonder. So, yes, she probably was idealizing their marriage, but also he was away a lot. Like, she probably missed him a lot, right? Some of the things Molly drew attention to in hers, in terms of her questions, were the very scant attention and time that Bradford spends on the Mayflower Compact and the first Thanksgiving, right? Which we tend to, when we're coming up in school, those are the two big points, right? That you know about the Mayflower Compact, you hear about the first Thanksgiving. I would like to suggest that, again, that is an example of the sort of historical narrative that we create, right? That while, you know, that was not Bradford's focus, it has now become our focus. Why do we focus all of a sudden on this narrative about the first Thanksgiving? Well, it soothes our racial historical guilt over treatment of Native Americans. right? Why do we focus on the Mayflower Compact instead of the Puritan worldview, which has clearly had, was Bradford's main focus in his text? Well, it's a lot less complicated to talk about early government in the colonies than it is to talk about how religion was used to justify, right, cruelty and violence and crime against another group of people, right? Third, and this actually didn't come up in anyone's R&R, but I was thinking about it while I was driving to work today. And that is, we talked a lot about the mistreatment of Native Americans. It's also worth noting, I think, and this is more pronounced in the southern colonies because of the plantation economy that gets set up, but the exploitation of natural resources, right? And Bradford, remember, it's not just the Native Americans that are evil. The wilderness, quote unquote, itself is evil. The environment itself is tagged as evil. And that allows us to exploit the environment without feeling bad about it, right? Exploiting the environment and exploiting other people tend to go hand in hand. And so we were talking about love thy neighbor being a really important biblical verse. I'll say, to me, granted, I'm a farmer's daughter and I'm an animal person, but to me, the second most important is being good stewards of the land, right? That is something, again, as a farmer's daughter, I just grew up believing, right? So those two are very much intimately intertwined. And so even though Bradford's not setting the stage for a plantation economy, the natural world in New England still does get exploited, right? And the ability to exploit it is based on this idea that the wilderness must be tamed, that God wants the wilderness tamed. And again, the language of wilderness and taming is very ideologically charged. So that's my follow-up from Tuesday. Anything else following up? Rollinson then? Let's see if I can. Oh God, I really hate this thing. I really do. There we go. Okay. And I'll take pictures again of the board. I want to be sure you can hear me, and I don't speak very loudly, so, you might not be able to. So, Rollinson, we think was born in 1637. She passed in 1711. Like Bradstreet, she was born in England, but lived in Massachusetts when it was still a colony. Her also like Bradstreet, right? Her husband was a pastor, and her father was prominent in the community. Forget exactly why or what he did, but at any rate, she's in a very similar social situation, social position as Bradstreet. Okay? So, to contextualize this, what the English call King Philip's War, and Philip was the leader of some Native Americans in the Massachusetts area. The English gave him this appellation of king, right? This is when, like, the conflicts that Rollinson is describing and her captivity that was part of those conflicts is happening because of King Philip's War. So, 1675 is the main year. It lasted over a year. Basically what happens, and this is not going to surprise any of you, because this same scenario plays out again and again and again for the next 250 years. The Puritans make a treaty with Native American groups in the area. And the treaty is supposed to denote boundaries, right? That land is yours, this land is ours, right? So, multiple Native American groups in the area agree to this treaty. The big surprise, right, jazz hands, me and JJ have decided that our new, like, signal for Puritans, right, our new, is jazz hands, right? So anytime someone says Puritans, you have to do jazz hands with it.
The big review.
The Puritans break the treaty, break the terms of the treaty. Big shocker, right? So, some Native American groups chose to, the Mohawks for instance, decide to aid the English when other groups, I think Philip was the leader of the Wampanoags, but I may be misstating that. The Iroquois, no, the Algonquins. Several tribes decide to resist, right, and go to war over the breaking of this treaty. So, some groups like the Mohawks aid the English in this conflict. Others, like King Philip's group and the Algonquins, are actively resisting the English, right? It is very, very violent. I think historically it is actually the bloodiest war in terms of per capita, right, that's ever happened on U.S. soil. So, like, in terms of the population that was involved and the amount of people who were killed or injured, the percentage is higher even than, like, the Civil War. So, what is it? This means, obviously, the English win, right? Because gunpowder. Hundreds of English are wounded or killed, but thousands of Native Americans are wounded or killed, right? So this becomes one of those early crucial instances of England breaking a treaty with Native Americans and getting away with it, right? Because they win the war, right? So, that's the context. This is when she's captured. In terms of her narrative, right, I would like to point out the footnote about the title. It's like an entire paragraph long, right? It's been shortened to a narrative of the captivity and restoration, right? But her original title is ridiculous. Right? And it's framed in terms, let me just see. Is, again, presented in terms of a moral drama, right? I'm not just pointing it out because it's so long it's silly, but also, like, all the information she's trying to cram into it has to do with this same setup of a moral drama, right? In which God favors the elect, the chosen, right? So her restoration, as she calls it, becomes a sign from God that she is indeed one of the elect. Her narrative becomes the first in a series of what are known as captivity narratives. Which are written and are very popular for the next couple of hundred years. Until Native Americans are completely confined to reservations, right? these captivity narratives keep getting published, and again, are very popular. They're popular especially during times of conflict and crisis with Native Americans.
Popular to the English?
White folks.
Okay.
I imagine it would be popular because it kind of turns the table on who's the bad guy.
Exactly.
Works.
Exactly. That's why these become very popular during times of conflict with Native Americans, because it reinforces white folks' view that the mistreatment, the exploitation, the violence against Native Americans is completely justified. Right? Yeah. Sets the Native Americans up as the bad guy. Right? So yeah, that's exactly it. Evelyn. So, a few things that we can talk more about, or we can talk about other things. Rowlandson's word choice in describing Native Americans is very, how should we say, loaded, right? Also, you know, she keeps coming back, like Bradford, to God's plan and providence. Alright. Which for her, again, is about this divine intervention that eventually gets her home, right, as a sign of favor. Also like Bradford, it's not just about the characterization of Native Americans, it's the characterization of the quote-unquote wilderness. Again, as being something evil, as if the landscape can be evil, right? This projection of morality onto inanimate objects always sort of tickles me. She also, though, as she's right, she's describing Native Americans, the environment, her situation in a very ideologically loaded way, but she also spends a lot of her narrative introspectively, right? So again, Puritans tend to value introspection, and often this introspection is trying to figure out if they are one of the elect or not. So, her introspection tends to express a lot of guilt. Her feeling guilty about various things. You know, she's also looking for signs, right? Just like Bradford. Like Bradstreet, her concerns tend to be focused on family members, right? And I just gotta say, when she's talking about family members being killed, even knowing all this, right, about the narrative and being aware of it, it's hard not to feel sympathy for the woman when she's talking about family members being killed and being separated from her husband and not knowing if she's ever going to see him again, right? So, like, while it's the text is informed by this sort of Puritan stuff, use the word stuff so I don't get fired, it's okay if you felt sympathy for Rowlandson, because I certainly do, right? I can't even imagine, again, watching your children die and being separated from your husband, not knowing if you're ever going to see it again, right? So yeah, it's okay if we feel sympathy for her at those points in the narrative. I certainly do, right? That's a horrific experience. So, if we look at the text. Yes, Abigail, I love that you have an art. Oh, also, will you email or airdrop or something, ours to CJ so he can see what yours look
Oh,
like?
yeah, of course.
And you can send him some from World Lit. Yours were always
Yeah.
really good in World Lit.
I can send that for sure.
I'll take a couple of those too.
Send him to Evelyn too. Again, I'd have JJ send you his, but he never writes them, so.
I don't have any of the ones that I did right anymore. Wait, no, I do. I have some. They're from World Lit, American Lit too.
Okay. If you've got some from American Lit too, if you would share them with CJ and Evelyn, that would be helpful.
I can do that.
Cause you write good ones when you do write them, you just don't write them. Okay.
I don't like them.
I know you don't like them. I don't like that you don't like them.
Oh, well.
Oh, well. Abigail, get us started.
Okay, so I wrote obviously about Mary Robinson, but like I wrote about like her recurring theme is like perseverance
Yeah.
through everything that she was going through. What else did I write about? Like how she through the whole entire thing, like which she's a Puritan, like she never lost faith. Like she rested in that to get her through all of the hardship. And I also noted that not only did she live through this horrid encounter, but she relived it through her writings because she had to reenact all of that. So not only did she go through it one time, but she had to relive it all over again
Yes.
to even write it, which is just crazy to me because,
Yes.
you know, PTSD. And I just pretty much said that her experience is something that so few of us can relate to, but the way she writes the narrative, I feel like I am walking in her shoes.
Yeah, I mean, let me pause and say this. In addition to the sympathy I feel for her, you know, about her family, you know, on Tuesday I think I said if you're looking for difference, you find difference from other people. If you're looking for similarity, you find similarity. The same goes for like finding the good and the bad in other people, right? You can always find something good to say about someone else. You can also always find something bad to say. So while I'm couching Rowlandson in these Puritan terms, right, to emphasize her worldview, because that's what's important in terms of the intellectual tradition, like Bradstreet, she's an admirable woman, right, in a lot of ways. And so, you know, Abigail, I think you just ticked off a bunch of them, right? That she's able to persevere through this experience, that she's able to keep her faith. I think that's an excellent point about her reliving it, right, as she's writing about it, because it was a traumatic experience. A lot of people didn't survive the experience, and those that did, no one else wrote about it, right? And so, yeah, this Rowlandson is very admirable in a number of ways, right? I think we can feel sympathy for her. I think we can admire her, right? I don't think that this larger sort of worldview that she's adding to, right, should take away from that.
I do have a few questions about it though.
Yes.
Like, whenever her kid passed away, her child, why did she refer to her as it?
I suspect to emotionally distance herself from the pain.
Okay. And like, it was really like vivid, like her narrative was like super detailed, like.
It's kind of graphic,
Yeah.
right?
Well, yeah, but like even like down to specific verses and like word for word conversations, like do you think it's like possible, like to truly remember every single detail like that?
Oh, no. Well, and here's the thing too, right? And some of you have heard me say this before in terms of talking about truth, right? When we leave class today, if someone came up to each of us and said, what happened in class today, we would all give a different answer.
That would be the truth to us.
And would also be true.
Yeah.
Right? So some, I mean, I doubt any of us are gonna like wildly fabricate details of what, right? But wait, I might. My memory's not great either, so, but yeah, it would still be true. So I think, you know, her recounting these very vivid details, you know, thank you, I've said this line already in this class, I think. You don't let the facts get in the way of the truth, right? Did these encounters happen word for word? Probably not. Does that make them any less true? I don't think so, right? I'm willing to go with it, right?
Well, she found some kindnesses, you know, a very minuscule amount, but she did notate some kindness, and I think if she were going to fabricate, you know, just on the basis of we're supposed to hate them, you know, I don't think she would have put that in there. I found.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a small moment, but I don't know, it stood out to me a
Which
little
is
bit.
funny because she of all people should be getting rid of Native Americans because they basically killed her whole family.
Yeah. Yeah, she does include these instances. Yeah, let's talk about that for a second, because those are important. And it's, I think the ones I remember have to do with the sharing of food, right? That's sort of a recurrent theme of kindness, right? Is the sharing of food. And, you know, we're Baptists. We know what breaking bread together means, right? That's fellowship, right? So it even goes beyond kindness. I will say that sometimes the way that she even frames those kindnesses, though, right? She, you know, it is also about they're kind savages, right? Like the good Native Americans in her narrative, or that idea of the noble savage, right, that Rousseau comes up with. So that they're still savage, even though they're kind, right? So, you know, when she's talking about the bloody game meat, right, she doesn't want, she can't hardly stomach it, right? Until she can.
Yeah.
until she can. But at first, right, she describes that as like, oh my gosh, I can't eat this, right? And so there's sort of these overtones of savagery, right?
Those changes in her ideal of what she thought she would do versus what she ended up doing, those were kind of my favorite part, just because,
Yes.
you know, like at the very start, she said, you know, I always thought I would rather be killed than be taken captive, yet here I am, trying to stay alive.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I enjoyed seeing that side of it, the way, you know, the dynamics of who she was and how she responded to what she went through.
Me too, Evelyn. And I think that also goes back to this idea of honesty, right? I mean, I think Rowlandson Anne, right, fits in with this intellectual tradition of introspection, right? Of not being afraid, right, to look inside yourself and not being afraid of what you're going to find, right, of what you're truly made of. And not only that, but then the willingness to publish it, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I think her pointing out how she surprises herself in her reactions, right, especially as time goes on, yeah, speaks to a willingness to be very honest, right, even about herself. Because some of the stuff she's confessing may not seem like a big deal to us. It would have to her.
Well, and within her faith.
And within her faith, her
So she
community.
kept questioning, like, why is God protecting these heathens? You know,
Yeah.
I'm going through this, and we must not be worthy yet of,
Yeah.
you know, we as a people, so.
Yeah. She's very honest about.
She knows it wasn't without cause.
Yeah. She's very honest about her struggling with her faith. Yeah. I like that about it too. And I will say, in terms of her including kindness, I think it's maybe at the very, very end of your reading for today. But one of the examples that always sticks out to me and makes the rest of the narrative more interesting to me is when she's describing how she, let's see, what is it? When I fetched water and had put the dish I dipped the water with into the kettle of water which I brought, they would say they would knock me down, for they said it was a sluttish trick, right? And by sluttish we know that they mean slovenly, unclean, right? So the fact that she includes details that speak to the opposite of this portrayal of savagery, right? That there's some recognition there that these Native Americans have their own set of rules, right? About what's clean and unclean, and they're different, right, from the Puritan rules, but they have a set of rules, right, that they abide by. And so while she doesn't frame it like that, right, she just sort of drops it. She just drops this example. I think she leaves it up to us, right, to read between the lines there about why that's important, why even include that. And maybe she feels like she can't comment on it, right? If she comments on it in a positive way, right, then it's no longer serving, right, this larger purpose of
Yeah,
the
'cause was it-
community.
Where was it at? In the beginning, like it was talking about how somebody else wanted her to write it. Was it the congregation or something like that?
Well, yeah, and this is again, right, a female writer, right? This anxiety of authorship. If her congregation is urging her to write this and supporting her in it, then she doesn't have to feel as much anxiety about authorship, right? She doesn't have to feel like she's being immodest by putting this experience out in the public, right? What else? What else?
I was kind of confused on the part there. Did the woman with the baby, the pregnant woman, did she die? Was that the one that got burned?
Yes.
Why was she dead and then they burned her, or did they kill her?
Well,
Cause like, I was really kind of confused on that part, cause I didn't know if she died like from how the experience and then they just burned her as like an example, or if they killed her.
No, they killed her.
I just know that it said something about, like, the children never saw her cry, only pray. I didn't know if that was, like, I was with you, like, I didn't know if that was during the fire, or if that was
Yeah, like,
until they
Why did
hit
they
her on the head.
kill, like, did I just?
She
miss
tries
it?
to run away, right?
Oh, so the pregnant woman who's like about to have her baby, like tries to run away from them, and so they like use her as an example, like, don't try to run away from
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, but it says that the baby was like on her, so like, did she have the baby and then try to run away?
I think they killed them both.
Yeah, like.
They
what I'm
do
saying is-
kill them both.
Oh, like, was the baby out of the womb, or did they like just?
I believe the
footnote
baby was
confusing
out of the
on that,
womb.
too.
It says.
Sorry, that part was just super.
Awful.
It was just like hard to understand too. It was
Yeah.
just really.
It's, CJ's right. I think it's clear that the baby's out of the womb.
They made me carry it out to another wigwam, so I mean, if she's gonna carry it out, then it would be foreign.
And there was
So
a note
they
that said something
kids-
about her being near birth, but then the footnote said that meant after the birth of the baby,
Right.
was confusing to me, because
Yeah.
I
Okay,
would
see,
think
when I
near
took
birth
from
means
near
I'm
birth
about to
is
have
that,
my baby.
yeah, that's what I thought it meant.
No,
Okay, that makes more
yeah.
sense.
She's near birth, but past tense, right?
Okay. That's really sad.
Yeah, so every time Rollinson mentions them, hitting them on the head, I mean, that's death instantly, pretty much? Okay.
Well,
Cause I just envision like the, you know, the big, like, wooden staff with the hard whatever stone inside
Yeah.
that you see in the museum. Like, I picture that and just somebody being beaten with it. But I don't know if they mean they're just knocking them down, like,
I mean,
knocking
I
them out,
think
or
it
if these are
depends.
murderous blows.
Right, I think it depends on the situation and the context, right?
Yeah.
Because
It's
I
hard to
think,
kinda pick those apart.
yeah, sometimes it means death. It can mean death.
Yeah, cause it said they hit her kid, right? But then her kid didn't die until so many days later
Right.
of just lack of, you know,
Yeah,
refreshment, as she put
yeah,
it.
yeah.
I got a question.
Yes.
So is this idea that God puts her through all of these struggles as a sort of test, is this an idea that is just kind of across the board in the Puritan culture, that God will do these sort of things to test you and in that sort of way, or was that her just trying to get through what she had experienced?
No,
'Cause I don't really understand that perspective.
yeah.
I mean, that's not the God I knew, so I had a hard time
Yeah,
getting.
not
it
my
through my head.
Jesus. I know. No, it's really common in Puritan writing for them to frame everything as a test. And so I think she even references Job, right? At some point. she
Yeah,
goes
and Lot's
like that.
wife, you know,
Yeah.
she
Yeah,
understood the
yeah, yeah.
temptation to look back.
Yeah. And so suffering is a test to demonstrate the strength of your faith. And this is not unlike, CJ, your question about Bradstreet's Weary Pilgrim poem, right? Where she's talking about getting through the suffering of this life in order to make it to the afterlife, right? So if,
But I felt like with Bradstreet, sure she had that, but she never, really pointed it out to, I've got to get through these trials that God has put upon me so that I may make it to his afterlife. Hers, after, you explained a little more, I kind of understood, because it seemed more like she was saying, I have to get through the trials that this world, that my surroundings,
okay,
have
Yeah.
caused to me, so that I may make it closer to God.
yeah. I mean, Bradstreet's situation was also pretty cush compared to this, compared to this experience, right? And Bradstreet did, had deaths in the family and that sort of thing, but I think her sort of suffering pales in comparison, I think, to this experience. Yeah, I mean, I feel you, CJ. I feel the same way. Not my Jesus, right? I tend to think about God as a benevolent presence, not as a punishing one.
See, and that's funny, because she
Puritans
actually
forget
says
about the
that.
New Testament a lot.
Yeah, the Puritans do be forgetting about the New Testament a lot. Their conception of God is different from the benevolence that we tend to. Although I guess it also kind of depends, because now that I'm saying that, I'm thinking back to Bradford consistently praising God's providence, right? And ultimately, even Rowlandson, right, can praise God's intervention, right? The divine intervention that gets her home.
Yeah, because she's amazed throughout the entire narrative that she's still alive.
Yeah.
And she asks the one native, she says, "You're gonna kill me." He says, "No, we're not." My question is like, but why not? Why not her? But her answer to that question is God's providence.
Right.
But it seemed more like, instead of what I took from it wasn't so much that God was testing her, as it was that she felt God was awaiting her to be worthy of his protection, and then constantly being reassured that, hey, he still has me, he still got my back, I'm still here. Just like this one little spot I highlighted, where the English start to catch up, it's right before the sixth remove, and she's, I can imagine, seriously hopeful that they're about to come and take her back and everything's gonna be gravy. But what she says is, God did not give them courage or activity to go after us. We were not ready for so great a mercy as victory or deliverance. if we had, you know, God would have found a way for us to get through, blah, blah, blah. So
Mhm.
I felt like it was more a matter of like, that's where I took the guilt from, the introspect. Like, I know my
Yeah.
people did this, and obviously, you know, it's wrong to murder. She doesn't come out and say that, but you can, I don't know,
Yeah,
maybe
you can
going
read
back to
between
the
the lines.
kindnesses,
Yeah.
I feel like more so than somebody being kind to her, it was her also being kind to them. So I feel
Yeah.
like, you know, we don't have their perspective in it, but I would say that that was also them seeing that, hey, you know, not all of the white people are these horrific monsters
Mhm.
that we were introduced to when they first came and settled here. So, I don't
See,
know.
the reason I asked that question is because I believe that kind of mindset in terms of their faith is a large contributor to the way that they can separate the Indians or really any other, you know,
Mhm.
ethnicity that they come across so heavily is because, I mean, if they can put words in Jesus' mouth and, or, you know, if they can put things on him that they have no evidence of, then they can do it to a person with complete ease. And I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
so I'm not crazy in thinking that, because I mean, I
No.
kind of wrestled with that one a little while.
That makes sense. That makes sense to me. Yeah. Abigail, you look like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, no, this is like, I'm totally flipping the switch here.
That's cool.
So like, you know how in World War II we had our tests and stuff, and like we had the main movements and stuff that you wanted us to take away from everything, like what is the main takeaway that you will want us to know about, like this, like the movement or like the,
Yeah, well, it's the Puritan worldview.
just the Puritan worldview, okay.
Right, and like what that consists of.
I didn't
right.
know if there was like something like more like specific, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, the Puritan worldview then has, right, more so like there's like specific tenets, right, that we've been talking about that inform that view.
Okay,
Yeah. Does that make sense?
yeah, that makes sense, I was just making sure.